Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Discovery Season 4 Episode 13, Coming Home. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Discovery, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for Discovery up to the Season 4 finale. If you have not seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, I really like this episode. Now, at the end of last week, I said, that last week's episode was so good that they were setting themselves up for like an easy home run. Like they could really do something amazing with it, and make one of the best episodes ever. Now, did they do that? No, they did not. But they didn't fumble it either. They didn't completely fuck it up. And they made a pretty good episode. Like, I think this was a good episode. And I will go as far as to say that this is the best season finale of Discovery so far, which, to be fair, is not a very high bar. Season 1 had a pretty nonsensical finale where they went back, had this Klingon War arc that lasted 2 episodes. After the Mirror arc, it felt very disjointed, and they like planted a bomb in Kronos or some shit. Season 2 had CGI diarrhea with all of a sudden all these shuttlecrafts making this huge fleet, fighting all these unmanned drone ships from Control, and it was just over. And then they stopped for like 5 minutes so Burnham could tell Spock how much she loved him while everyone was dying and blowing up around them. Like, it was way over sentimentality. So that finale was a bit of a disappointment. Season 3, you don't even remember the Season 3 finale that strongly. It tells you how forgettable it was. I know the reveal of what the burn was happening. It didn't happen in the finale. It happened in a couple episodes before. In the finale, it was just dealing with, a man-child yelling, and that's what caused the burn. And so that was very underwhelming. I think Season 3 overall was underwhelming. And so I will say this is easily the best finale of season finale that Discovery has had. And I would probably go as far as to say that Season 4 is the best season. I think it's kind of, to me, it's between Season 4 and Season 2. Season 3, I think, was okay at best, better than Season 1, which the more I go back and watch Season 1, the more I think they really fumbled it. So that, to me, is easily the worst season. And Season 3 was just boring and bland. I think they completely botched doing the long-term story arc, and the big reveal they were building up to was really anticlimactic. And I think the writers even admitted that they didn't really know what they were doing, what the reveal of the burn would do, and many in the staff were not happy with what they came up with, which neither was I. And Season 2 was just the definition of a mixed bag. Season 2 definitely had the highest highs of the show, but it also had some of the lowest lows. Like, it would be amazing, then it would totally suck, then it would be amazing. And the finale itself, as I said, was a huge mixed bag. So that makes it hard for me to compare Season 4 to Season 2, because Season 4, I think, definitely had the best long-term story arc. It definitely had the best mystery, but the pacing was off. It should have been a much shorter season, and it dragged for too long. They get the one thing that sticks out in my mind is that stupid episode about wrestling and casino games. That was so dumb. But overall, like, the story itself was definitely the best story that the season is most consistent. The payoff, like, that we got in these 2 episodes was the best of any of these long-term story arcs. Because Season 1 also had the whole thing with Lorca, which I think was dumb that he was from the Mirror Universe. But anyway, I think Season 4 didn't have anything as great as Season 2, but it also didn't have anything as terrible as Season 2, so it's hard for me to compare. I think in the end I might have to go with Season 4, just I mean, I would season 4 would win easily if it was a shorter season and they just fixed the pacing, because it did like the landmark episodes, like the one where Tarka and Book were arguing in front of the Federation Council. Like that was an amazing episode. These two finales, the 2 episodes at the end of the season was amazing, and some when they hit the main story points, but then they just had a lot of filler in between that. They should have just like that Great Barrier bullshit. They should have just got rid of and made the season shorter. So I guess it's better in season 2 because it didn't have any of the stupid bullshit that season 2 had. Because season 2 also had major pacing issues, to be fair, because it kept going back. It took them like 6 episodes to find Spock, and they had this bullshit with the, my serial thing going, Tilly, Tilly, and which didn't really have anything to do with anything. And then the ending wasn't so good. So, okay, I think I will say that season 4 was marginally better than season 2, making it my favorite season of Discovery. But not that it's an amazing season. I still think Discovery definitely has a lot of space to improve. That being said, I still think it's way better than the first. All 4 seasons of Discovery are way better than first 2 seasons of Enterprise. I'm sorry. I would take Discovery over the first 2 seasons of Enterprise any day of the week. Any day of the week. Anyway, enough talking about it in grand terms. Let me talk about this episode specifically. I thought this was a very powerful, suspenseful, and it had emotional highs. I will admit to crying, to shedding some tears during this episode. It was very emotionally effective. I was very immersed. In the episode, they did a couple of things that wasn't too huge of a fan of, and I guess I'll start with them, and that's its inability to commit to killing off a character, because that's what I was really hoping, and that's why I'm saying why this episode wasn't amazing. It didn't go that distance because they were too chicken shit to kill off, and it wouldn't have to be a main character. It doesn't have to be Book. Doesn't even have to be Jet Reno. It could have been Detmer, or it could have been even that stupid General Colonel from Earth or whatever. They couldn't even kill her! I mean, come on! But when she didn't die, that was like, oh my god, you're not even going to kill her off? Jesus Christ. And as much as I am glad that, because I didn't have any issues with them bringing Book back to life after the death fake out, because I'm glad the Book's going to be in the show going forward, and I like the dynamic that they have between him and Burnham, so I have mixed feelings about that, but I think it would have been powerful had they committed to killing off Book. And part of me does think it kind of deflates the whole thing, because they even reference this episode, and this is something I mentioned in my earlier reviews about how towards the beginning of the season, President Rillick was, lecturing Burnham about how she can't let go and she has to try to save everyone, so it was kind of setting up for her having to sacrifice someone. Now in this episode, she does make this conscious decision to sacrifice. In fact, she almost sent Detmer to her death, but she never follows through with it because none of these characters actually die. So yes, and they even acknowledge, oh Burnham, you've grown so much because you were willing to sacrifice. Okay, I mean, yes, she was. And for like 30 minutes or whatever it was, she actually thought she did sacrifice the person who was closest to her. So I will acknowledge that it's not like a total, they didn't totally botch that storyline. It didn't totally suck. They kind of did the bare minimum of fulfilling that storyline. And in my opinion, it would have been way better. Honestly, I think the most ideal solution would be to kill off Detmer, because she is, as I said, these bridge crew, they did a terrible job of, they were always background characters throughout the first 3 seasons. So, oh yes sir, and they try to develop them more this season and last season and this season. This season they did a terrible job at trying to develop them more. They would just randomly spout like exposition about their background. When I was a kid, out of nowhere, which was horrible. I wanted them to develop these characters, but they just and I think it could have been done, and it still could be done in the future. You just got to do a better job. That's not how you do character development. You don't do character development by having them randomly spout shit from their childhood. Now, so Detmer was an important. She's been there since the very first episode, so she was an important character enough. But at the same time, she's barely developed, so she's expendable. And I think Detmer's death would have been better than even Ariam's, because I loved Ariam's death in that episode where she died, because they developed her for that one episode. They showed her backstory. They followed her and then killed her. And I think even if she hadn't appeared in any episodes before that, it still would have been a very effective death. Where they fumbled is the next week, where they had this super long funeral where Saru was singing and everyone was like, oh my god, because they hadn't earned that connection. They hadn't earned that these characters cared about Eren so much. Whereas, as underdeveloped as Detmer is, I think they earned that these characters do care about them. So I think it would have been a more effective death in terms of how it affects the crew, especially the way she died. Or hypothetically, the way she would have died by Burnham ordering her, even though she was willing to volunteer, to fly the suicide mission, which turned out not to even be a suicide mission because the general did it, and she ended up being away. Which again, that pissed me off. Like, if you're not gonna send alright, they're not gonna send Detmer. They can't commit to that, so they'll send this general. But she's kind of expendable, so sure, they can kill her off, and they can't even commit to that. So that irritated me. Like when they said, "Oh, we beamed her out," I'm like, oh, God, what? That deflates the whole tension of the whole scene. The whole tension of the whole scene is that it was a suicide mission. But they just easily beamed her out, so the tension wasn't really real in that situation to begin with. Anyway, sorry. That's my main negative about the episode. The rest of the episode I loved. I think really worked for me. I like how they were trying to communicate with Species 10C, and the Vulcan president was to try to do a mind meld, and she said that they were confused and they were trying to send this message to them saying, let us go from this bubble, and they came back with a message like, with confusion, saying, what, you're already free, what are you talking about? And so they, that confused the Discovery crew, but then they finally deduced that Species 10C is like a collective society consciousness, and they don't really understand the concept of individuality. Now, this reminded me a lot of the Deep Space Nine premiere Emissary that dealt with the wormhole aliens, which I won't call them prophets because that didn't come till later in the show, who were so alien and they didn't understand the concept of linear time, and so they were like, what are you talking about? And I got that same impression here, and I'm saying that as a very, very good thing. That's a very positive thing. And I do like how they went out of their way to specifically make clear that this is not like the Borg. They're not a collective consciousness the way that the Borg are. In fact, who I thought of more was like the Changelings and the Great Link. That's the first thing I thought of the whole interconnectedness. Although the Changelings are often will go off and become individuals and leave the link and rejoin and whatever, and they kind of share. So it's a bit different. It also made me think of thinking of the Expanse, the proto-molecule creators, although I don't know if I can't remember if this has been explained in the show yet, so I might be giving away spoilers for the books. But they're also, even though they're extinct when the story takes place, they've been said to be a single consciousness, and it made me think of them a lot as well. So rather than the Borg, and I like how they specifically point out that it's more sort of harmonious than what you would think of the Borg, which is Borg was sort of more forceful and forcing people to join their collective against their will, where this is more of a harmonious thing, which is again why I thought of the Great Link. And so I thought that was an interesting twist on things, and how they were, trying to communicate with Tennessee at the same time of trying to stop Book, and it was that communications is definitely the theme of the end of the season arc for dealing with Tennessee, and I love that. I think, as I said in the previous episode, I thought they handled that extremely well. I thought they handled that well here. I thought that added to the tension. Now, as far as Book being able to talk Tarka down, but then it's too late and Tarka for him to fix it, because I like that scene. I thought it was an effective scene. I bought it for the characters. I bought that Tarka was just acting out of pure emotion and the strong desire to be reunited with his denial, denying that he'll never see his friend again, and Book had to splash him with the hard reality that he will never see him again and that he's lost. And he pulls from his own experience of having to deal with the grief of losing his entire world earlier this season, and so that really worked for me. I thought that was a very powerful scene. The whole Tarka story overall, if I'm going to look at it throughout the whole season, didn't really work for me. I never really got immersed or bought his, relationship with his scientist friend or whatever, because they just kind of spouted that out in exposition, and then many episodes later this shows the backstory, which I didn't really connect to. It felt like a cliche kind of thing that we've seen dozens of times before, and so I never felt that connection. So I kind of had to take it, when I say I really like this scene, I kind of just had to take their word for it that Tarka is connected to. But to be fair, what's his face? God, I forget the name of the actor, but of course he played Aaron Wright on The Expanse. He's an amazing actor, though, so he sells the scene. And David Ayala, I believe his name is, who plays Book, also a really good actor, so they really sell that scene. So even though I never bought that backstory, the scene still works for me because they make it work, and I buy that in that moment that is what they're feeling. So that was extremely effective to me as well. And okay, so then we get the whole thing with the Spore Drive. They had to malfunction, destroy it in order to break free of the bubble or whatever, and that means that they have to use warp drive to get back to their galaxy. It'll take decades. I kind of knew that Species Tennessee would just let them go back, because we know they have the technology to instantly travel to that galaxy. So that was, to me, when that happened, I was like, yeah, of course it is. I never was thinking that. Although for an instant, maybe I thought, are they going to turn this into a next season? They're just traveling. No. Then I rejected that immediately, and I was like, no, because that would be boring. And I really hope they didn't. And so when they revealed that, they'll just create a wormhole for us to get back to their galaxy, I'm like, yeah, of course. And I like that. I had no issues with that either. And I already talked about this whole suicide mission thing. I did as I said, I still, even though I think they fucking copped out big time, I still like that scene in and of itself, because I still again, as I said, that Burnham was willing to order someone to their death in order to save the human race. That was still powerful. To me, it could have been way more powerful. It could have been absolutely amazing, top notch, had Detmer actually flown it and died. That would have been the best scenario for me. The general, at the very least, they could have killed the general off. It still wouldn't have been top notch because it was a nothing character. But it still would have been better than what it was. But I still liked it. I still thought it was a great character moment. And I have to say, so yeah, Tarka's death I loved. I loved how Tarka knew that they were gonna die because he realized he made a huge mistake, but he used his last breath to save Book, who, as he said before, was, other than that scientist dude, was the only real friend he ever had. And I kind of bought that. in this moment, that he did connect to Book in that way, and that he was actually hurt when Book like turned on him and wouldn't help him. And so I love that he used his last moments of life to save Book's life. Now, then we get the death fake out, where we feel like the transporter beam didn't work. And everyone said this before, and I'm just going to echo the sentiments I've heard in all other videos, whatever. So Sonequa Martin's green performance in this moment was amazing. It was definitely the best she's done in the show. She completely sold. And this is the one thing I was going to say, because, you know, in a lot of my Discovery reviews, people who watch my other reviews probably heard me complain about over sentimentality. And you probably, if you're keeping track, you notice I haven't used that term in this episode, because I don't think this episode is guilty of that. And particularly in this moment, I think it's earned sentimentality. It's earned emotional connection. And so in that moment, you totally bought it, that Book, you know, she was like, the look on her face when she thought Book was alive and going to beam, and then the beam fizzled out and it was nothing, and that look of devastation, and how the whole crew, I love how they did shots of the whole crew around them, how they could feel the devastation, even for their captain, even if they had no personal connection to Book themselves, they could feel how devastated she was, and how she immediately, when someone said "Captain," the 10C, and she had to immediately like pick herself up. To me, this is what not only was an amazing performance, but it also proves to me once and for all that Michael Burnham is a very good captain. And I would probably even go as far to say that she's a better captain, or at least a more fleshed out character than like Archer or Janeway. Because Janeway was written very inconsistently. The writers from year to year couldn't agree on how to write her, and Archer was always bland. I'm sorry, even in the good seasons he was still kind of bland. So yeah, I would say I think Michael Burnham's a better captain. I think she's a better, more rounded character, and that moment is what really solidified that to me, because I was still, to be honest, kind of on the fence of her character up until that point, but that sold it to me. How you could feel the weight of how devastated she was, losing the man she loved the most, and then to be able to just try to pick herself up and move on. There's shit that needs to be done. Let's do it. Like, it was so powerful. It was one of the most powerful moments and the show has ever done. Now, how do I feel about the fact they brought Book back to life? Now, honestly, I have mixed feelings about Book, and I would have been fine had he stayed dead. To me, that would have been extremely powerful. That the death fake out, that or because you think he's beaming aboard and then all of a sudden he's snatched away. Like, to me, that's a powerful death, because usually in Star Trek, when they have like someone's having trouble beaming away, and oh no, are they going to beam out, and they do this to create suspense. I just watched the original series episode Doomsday Machine, which was probably one of the first episodes to do this, where Kirk was on the ship that was getting rammed into the Doomsday Machine. They were trying to beam out, and the transporters malfunctioning, and it was like, oh no, do we have him? Do we not have him? And they beam him out at the last second. And Star Trek has done this a lot, but almost every single time they have done it, the person does beam over and everything's fine. So I would have actually thought it would have been amazing and would have broke the trope had they actually died. Had they actually, they're going to beam out at the last moment, and then, nope, they're dead. And that to me, that would have been really powerful, because it's kind of would describe the how death is not always like, sometimes it's just really sudden and senseless. And for Burnham to having to deal with that Book changed his mind, that he was there, he almost there, and just didn't make it. Like, that's something that I think could have been really haunting over her character for the rest of the season. Would have been a great character development. Now, do I think that was completely undermined by the fact they brought him back to life? Well, no, because again, we still had that moment where that moment in time before Tennessee brought him back that she thought he was dead. And I love the scene when they're with Tennessee, and Tennessee points out, like, Tennessee stopped the DMA and they saved Earth, but they're like, why are you sad? Because we just saved, your whole species. And she had to explain to him. And I thought that was an extremely powerful scene where Burnham had to explain to them that she lost the man that she loved. And then when they brought Book back and they were like, oh, well, we have him right here. I gotta admit, this is a scene where I cried my eyes out. I was really tearing up in this scene. To me, that was an extremely powerful, that was a really lethargic, because I did believe that Book was dead. And as I said, I would have thought that I would have been happy with that had he stayed dead. But I did, when they brought him back, I was like, oh my God, he's back. And I'm like, that that I thought was extremely powerful. And then having Book say his piece to Tennessee, where they're like, oh, we'll promise only to use the DMA in uninhabited space. And he's like, no, that's not good enough. Like, you need to stop it altogether because you are causing harm. And they explained that they were doing it out of fear, and I love that Tennessee is reasonable. I love that they're not like the Founders or anything antagonistic. They're just normal. I would say normal people, but they're so strange. But I love that. That just made a mistake, and they're acting out of fear because the DMA apparently is powering their defense systems. Without it, they can't keep their defense systems going, and Book is just like, look, you have to move past your fear. I love that. I thought that was absolutely amazing, and that whole sequence when they were talking to Tennessee. Now, granted, when the president, they asked the president, like, do you have anything you want to say to Tennessee? And she started giving this really long, complex speech. And I was like, wait a second. They're able to communicate that with Tennessee? I thought they would just be like, have like mathematical equation plus, the emoji, the emotion thingy. But now all of a sudden she's able to do like a complex speech. But once they started doing that and the scene was going on, it's like, all right, maybe off screen sometime they improved their communication thing. We're able to communicate more clearly, which fine, whatever. I'm willing to go with that. So that was all well and good. And then we got sprinkled through this. We got the scenes with Tilly and Vance at Earth. Now, I haven't realized, because I never complained about Tilly much in the past, but I haven't realized how much I don't like this character until I see her on screen again. I'm like, oh God, here's Tilly again. I didn't realize until she was absent how much I appreciate her not being there. But that being said, I didn't have an issue with these scenes. I mean, it was a bit contrived that cadets were involved in this evacuation just so they could have Tilly there, which is whatever. She's the main character. And that to have Vance need someone to play off of, so it makes sense to have an established character. So it's fine. And I did like how it was a way of raising the stakes and letting the audience know exactly what's at stake, that the stakes felt more real, where you saw Earth like in actual danger. So I did think it ultimately added to the episode, and I did like it, but I wasn't like crazy about it or whatever. It was just, it added to the tension nicely. And yeah, when they were having a drink, and then when they found the DMA, just stopped, and there was like, they did it. Like, that was a powerful moment again. So by having that storyline, they were able to monopolize on and make on the emotional impact of this whole story. So I do think that was ultimately a smart decision that I did really like. And then you get all the epilogue stuff, which I've heard some people complaining about the epilogue stuff being too long. For me, I didn't even notice. I like stories that have closure, and I think we did need closure to the season. The scene where they're hanging out in the bar, to me, that was kind of like, okay, unnecessary. But the other stuff with between Burnham and Book, like that was very powerful, and I bought it. Like, I don't have an issue with the fact that Book got off with slap on the wrist, just doing community service or whatever. And apparently, he gets to take his cat with him. I was thinking for a moment they might leave Grudge behind with Burnham again, but whatever. Anyway, like, that makes sense to me because in the end he ultimately did help, like, save humanity. So, and that's like people sometimes complain about the Star Trek 4 thing where Kirk got off lightly, but he freaking saved humanity. Like, I think he should get off lightly. But anyway, so that's kind of how I feel here too. So that was good stuff. As I said, I like where Burnham and Book's relationship are now. I think it bodes well for this series going forward. And when they revealed the president of Earth, I was like, I did not recognize who it was, but I was like, I'm sure this is a celebrity actor. This is someone whom I should know. I guess my mind just went more to, like, actors. I wasn't thinking of, like, real life politicians, and because I know who Stacey Abrams is. I've seen her before, like videos of her and whatnot, and I know the importance, and I actually really support what she's doing because she's helping galvanize the African American community in Georgia, and is mainly responsible for Biden winning Georgia, and also for the 2 Democratic senators who won in Georgia, because she galvanized the communities there to ensure that Democrats would win. And she's running for governor, which she had lost last time she ran, but I'm hoping this time she wins because I really support her politics. Totally behind her. I still didn't recognize her until it was pointed out to me. I'm like, oh, that's who that is. So, and once I learned that, I was like, that actually is I love it. I love the fact that they made her the president of Earth. And, of course, she apparently is a longtime Star Trek fan and had tweeted about Discovery specifically. And so the producers asked her, hey, do you want to be on the show then? Because we're looking for a president of Earth. And she was like, yeah. Apparently she said she would be happy to play any role. And see, she didn't come off as someone with no acting abilities, which is why I didn't think of politicians or whatever. I thought of other actors because she did a good job. She didn't come off as fake as sometimes when they get celebrities who aren't actors to cameo, like what's his face, like the basketball player guy they got in episode of Next Generation Gambit Part 2 to play Klingon, like I can't remember his name, but anyway, James Worthy, maybe, I don't know. Well, he was terrible. Like, you could tell he wasn't an actor, and so and she actually did a really good job. So I guess that's why my mind didn't go to non-actors when I was trying to figure out. But I just got the impression, like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is a well-known celebrity, but who are they? So that was really cool, especially learning about that. I really appreciated that. So yeah, overall, I did really like this episode. I think that it could have been. All right, so wait, my rating for Coming Home out of 10 is a 9. Excellent. I think this episode could have been a 10 had they actually killed off Detmer, or at least Bulk, or at least the stupid general. Well, maybe the general wouldn't be enough to make it a 10, but I don't know. It's kind of a weak 9 at the moment. It would be a strong 9. Like, I almost gave this episode an 8, but the more I talked about it, more I think, no, this episode is actually really good. So it's just on the brink of becoming a 9, but it would be a very strong 9 if they killed off the general. It would be a 10 if they had killed off Detmer or Bulk. Like, had they been able to commit to that, I think would have made it way better. But still a great episode. Still easily the best finale of Discovery. And hopefully this next season will improve off of because this is a good stepping point. This is a good step forward for Discovery to season 4 overall. They just still had a lot of pacing issues and issues with over sentimentality and stuff like that. So I don't think those issues with over sentimentality are ever going to be fixed. But maybe, because as I said in these last 2 episodes, all the sentimentality was earned. There's one scene I didn't even mention was when Culber didn't go down to the planet to communicate with Tennessee because he's like, I want to be with my family, with Stamets and Adira, and that was, again, earned sentimentality. Like, that got me, in the heart. That was a good moment, and so hopefully they can start earning their sentimentality and not overdoing it, which they did too much in earlier parts of the season. But anyway, that is it for my review of the Discovery Season 4 finale. I shall continue to cover all things Star Trek, older Star Trek episodes, as well as covering Star Trek Picard, which continues to air, and many other shows on my channel, such as The Expanse, Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.